Welcome to Unfiltered, a podcast where real conversations meet real healing. I'm your host, Jackie Douglas-Jones, a mental health therapist, professional life coach, and feminine life strategist. My ultimate aim is to empower you with hope and an indestructible self-belief that will enable you to confidently take your next steps, wholeheartedly knowing that you also deserve peace and happiness. Let's get started. Welcome to the penultimate episode of Season 1 of Heartfelt. Today we explore a book called The King's Race. The King's Race was written by Dr. E.L. Levitt, who felt compelled to write it after reading to his son's junior school class and realizing that there were not many books that kids could really relate to. The story is warm and accessible to all ages. It carries powerful, meaningful life lessons. I encourage you to read The King's Race and follow Spot's adventure and life-changing realization. Okay, I wanted to just start off by hearing a bit more about you, about your story. I mean, I know you're a dermatologist, but I've kind of been wondering, how long have you been in New York? When did you start? Like, what is your sort of background story into how you came to be where you are today?
Well, it's a very long story and depends where you want to start. But in terms of my personal travels, in a few sentences, I was born in Ukraine. At the age of 8 months old, my family immigrated to Israel. We lived in Africa and mostly in Nigeria, but Ivory Coast, Kenya, for about 7 years on and off. My family was sent by the Israeli government to do humanitarian care in
Wow.
those countries. My mom was a physician treating malaria. My dad building roads and bridges. He was a project manager of a large corporation. They were trying to build a trans-African highway from the east to the west. And because of a lot of coups and changes in the governments, it never panned out, but they were attempting that. In between, we would travel to Israel back and forth during the summers, visiting other countries on the way. Since there were never direct flights, since those countries were part of the OPEC, and it was kind of under the radar, the fact that they were helping them with
Right.
different projects. And then my family moved to the United States when they didn't really find an opportunity to work after the big projects that my dad was in charge of coming back to Israel. He found that he was given a desk job. It wasn't really his
Wow.
dream. And I remained with my grandparents. Eventually, there was a situation where I was lost in the desert, and I realized when there were no phones back then, no cell phones. It was 1985, and I realized that the stress that would have happened to my grandparents if anything happened to me, if I would go to the army and being alone, responsibility for them. And so I decided to join my parents in the United States. That was 2 years after. And I joined them and realized that I have to make up and do something back in return. And so I skipped 2 years in school, one in high school and one in college. And then my parents told me, no, take medical school a little easier. Don't do it in 3 years because I wanted to skip some time there too. And that's it. And then I did that. And uh, ever since, that's what I'm doing, trying just to utilize good and kindness in anything and everything that I do to make the world a more welcoming, a more happy, healthier place.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the story of your parents, and I can see how that plays out in your life and wanting to give back with all the work that they've done in the past through the years. I can really see how that sort of molded you and shaped you into wanting to give back as well, and into service. I mean, service is to serve others is, I feel, one of the greatest gifts that we have. So I love that we have you on our podcast, because part of what we do is trying to give back to those who are suffering mentally, with mental health. And I think having someone like you who has written this incredible book that, listen, my husband and I have both read it. We lay in bed together reading the book and absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And it was such a joy to read. And we were actually reading it separately because I read much faster than he does. Um, so we had a really great time reading the book together, and then sort of discussing it, and listening to one another's opinions of the book. So uh, even though it's a children's book, um, it really made us think. The book really connects with us as the reader of it. What actually inspired you to? I mean, you're a dermatologist. I know you've written a book. I think it's called A Lost Art, Reflections of a Dermatologist. I saw that there was that book, and I thought, wow, this is such a depart from that, to writing a children's book. So please tell us a little bit about how that came about. How were you inspired to write this book?
It's really a very simple inspiration was my son. I was asked to read in his kindergarten a book for the children. Every parent had the opportunity to do that, and I said, of course, I will do that. And I made a window in my schedule. I told my staff, please block this time out. I'm going to be going to his kindergarten, to his school, and reading a book. And then, being always busy, I didn't check which book I'll read. And I went the evening before, to his room and started perusing through the books, and nothing really spoke to me like the books that my mom read to me. And I'm like, I can't read to them just anything. I have to read to them something. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to write something for them, something that I think will speak to them, to the school that he's in. And he's in a religious Jewish school at that time. And I figured, let me try and do something that would represent the values and message that they would grow into, a message that many outside may not be able to appreciate perhaps as much. But the fact that they would have to explain themselves to others why they're going to school like that, why are they reading a book that some people would say is outdated, why are they, the entire, if you look at Nietzsche's saying, God is dead, we killed him, and his concern about that. Can we handle a vacuum where there is no rule of God? And can we really be the Superman without God? Can we be our own directors? And we saw what happened with that: World War I, World War II, and so on. The idea would be to tell them that they have independence, and the fact that they have laws, they have more freedom than when you don't have an organized schedule. So you have an organized
Mm.
schedule. Within that framework, you have freedom. And that's something that took me a very long time to appreciate and to realize. So to try and
Mm.
bring that to them within a story, because if you try to teach, there is a wonderful statement by Aristotle, who said that there are three ways that people judge you when you're trying to explain anything to them. There is your trustworthiness, your reasoning, and the emotion, right? So it's the logos, the ethos, and the pathos, and it's most important to actually go through the emotional part, because you can reason as much as you want, as we can see in today's world. Um, you're shocked, but the people don't follow reason. But a story
Mm.
speaks volumes. And so this was the
Mm.
way to go. And I'm sorry, I'm going so philosophical on you, but again, we're
Don't
we're
worry.
talking among adults here, as opposed to speaking to children, and the
Sure.
overarching plan has to be clear. And so, uh, uh, borrowing on my life in Nigeria, where I was the only kid in school, and where I was having it was called Park Avenue, where we used to live. We had the
Wow.
ranch home, and there were a lot of animals around there. We had to, as part of the people who came over there, we had to give work for the locals, and so we had to hire a chef, a housekeeper, a driver, etc.
Mm,
So,
mm,
nobody would think that we're taking jobs. That was the agreement that the
sure.
companies had with the local government. And I remember running among the sheep and making, trying to copy their sounds and doing or doing all the sound.
That's brilliant.
So making those sounds over there and adding them into the story framework was a pleasure. And when I came over to the kids and then I was reading to them and making the sounds, their eyes opened, they laughed, and it told me that I have to finish the book. I was reading to them everything I could. I stayed up all night. I wrote the book, and at around like 6 o'clock in the morning, I was like, all right, I'm ready. Let me go to see them all hyped up. And as I said, when I read to them and I saw the response, I realized that I have to complete the story. And then I completed it, but it was just stuck there and I was disappointed because I thought this story needs to be told. And this was written about 10 years ago. And then
Wow.
after being part of a group of physicians and other healthcare specialists in a book called Healthy for Life, where I was asked to be the dermatologist writing one of the chapters on healthy living. I had the opportunity to meet with Brave Book publishers, and then I said, well, why don't I talk to them? They perhaps know how to go there because I don't really know how to publish. Like I treat people. That's
Sure.
what I do. And
Yes.
they helped me along. And between them and Karen and Paul, they opened really doors for me. And it's really proves the
Yes.
point that it's not what you know, but unfortunately who you know. And that's what helped me come along and get this book out the way it is now.
That's amazing. And how did your son react? What was his reaction to the book?
The same like the rest of them. As a matter of fact, when I read to him the book years later, he asked, "Pop, can you read to me, please, again?" So he wanted to hear the book a second time. But the interesting thing is, I was reading it to him in bed, and I didn't find that he was asking me the questions. Perhaps he was just listening to them, but I could see many of the ideas. Uh, Led him to think and perhaps even act in accordance to some of the messages that were there without him even realizing it. So I would have loved it to be more a discussion, which would have happened if this book was dissected and analyzed perhaps in school as opposed to simply reading in bed when you're already tired. You're getting just the magical experience, but you're not
Mm,
thinking about how would I be in his shoes or in the
mm,
father's shoes, or what could I have done better, or why did he decide that he wanted to disappear, and why did he decide that after his ability the challenge, why did the challenge make him revel in it and become
mm.
kind of like baptized into a
Yes.
person
Yes.
different person. I
So
say, you see, to me too, it is like a person, even though it's an animal, right?
I also related to the animals as a person, actually. So I totally agree with that. My favorite part of the book, and I think it speaks to me on a level that is a very personal one, and without giving too much away to our listeners, because I do want them to go and read the book. My favorite part in the book is where Tony is now stuck in that big group of wolves, and Spots comes and decides to help him. And um when the sheep says, why are you helping him? Like, he did the worst things to you. Like, how can you possibly help him? And yet Spots helps him still and repairs those terrible things that were done to him with kindness and grace and compassion. And that for me spoke very loudly, especially coming from South Africa, coming from the country that I come from. And I think that when I read that, I was like, wow, this book needs to be read all over the world. Like, it needs to go, because I know for a large part, my kids growing up in South Africa are very resilient. When I was reading this, I thought, actually, even my kids at the ages of 19 and 22, I want to read this book with them, because there are so many subtle layers and there are so many messages that can be given. And I almost felt like it it's not just for primary school. Like, I feel like it needs to be dissected in high school, and things need to be discussed, and possibly even at university level, because I think you've written it in such an incredible way that it does kind of, it works your mind. Like, you're constantly going, oh, yes, oh. There were a number of times where I said to my husband, are you on this chapter yet? And he said, no, not yet. Wait. And then we discussed the chapter, and I'm like, there's so many subtleties here and so many layers and so many underlying things. So it's so powerful for me that part of the book where Spots just, I mean, he experienced so much bullying and exclusion and discrimination, and yet he just keeps showing up. I mean, I know it's a story about adversity, but I'm just thinking from a mental health point of view and your experience with your son, how do you think it could really help children and parents in the mental health kind of way?
First of all, thank you. I agree with you, and I'm really happily surprised that you gave that book the needed uh, time and respect, because I did write it with many layers, and I was hoping people would really allow themselves to appreciate that, and not think that, oh, we're just reading into it. He didn't really mean it. And it's, even if that did happen, it's beyond the point. You are given the book, so you get to enjoy and dissect and analyze it the way you want it. But to answer your question, the book appeared as short chapters in a newspaper in Brooklyn. It was read in other uh, counties as well, but it was appearing in Brooklyn, where it was half in English, half in Russian. A- And
Wow.
um, and I had a patient that came to me. She was 16, uh,
Wow.
with her mother, and her father, a very loving father. She was their only child, older child. Her brother died from a suicide, and
Oh, so sorry.
the father, yes, and then they thought they cannot have another child, and she was born late in their
Oh,
relationship. And they were obviously babying her, protecting her, which has a lot of layers of, you understand, psychological and pressure, etc. And uh, then the father, who loved her so much, ended up getting sick, suffering. Doctors didn't believe that he really suffered. He had severe chronic pain,
right.
polymyalgia rheumatica, um, and um, and he and he died. And she
Oh,
was at extreme depression. I obviously came to them,
mm,
visited them, because I knew the father and I knew the family. And after the book appeared in chapters, she came to me with her mother, crying, and wanted to give me a hug, because she said I was lost.
mm,
I was starting to, I was overeating. I felt in school I did not find myself. I gained so much weight I did not recognize myself, and the book gave me back a direction. And honestly, as I think about it, I'm having tears in my eyes because uh, this is the goal of the book. The goal of the book is to show love and to show direction and give resilience, like you said, just showing up and saying, you know um, what others think is your weakness is actually your strength, because to understand someone who is in trouble, you can't understand them if you never experience anything of that nature yourself. And to be able to help people, you would be able to help them best if you feel for them, be part of so many missions to free uh, others, whether it is standing in the civil rights movement here in the United States, or other things. Um, to understand someone who goes through an addiction, you have to relate to that and perhaps have your own addiction. I had a lady I did a surgery yesterday on, and she has a problem. She loves to smoke. She doesn't have alcohol problem, but she loves to smoke. And I said to her, you know what? I understand how difficult it is. I have an addiction with chocolate. I love sweets. I know it's not very healthy, but
Me too.
it's kind of like the same idea. But you need to do it for your overall health, not even for yourself, but perhaps for your children, for the rest of your family.
Mm,
So, so how the book uh, helps people with mental disabilities, I think uh, a mental disability is something that is judged by us based on our laws of what is disability. And I think that in the right hands, with the right direction, of course, we have degrees of disabilities, but that disability can be empowering both to the person who has them and to the rest of his family. I've seen families really change and become um, better people. And so I think that it's hard to understand or believe that, but I don't think there are coincidences. And they say God only tries those who can handle it, and it's painful to say that because some of the things that I see are so painful. But if you can make from adversity strength, uh, from darkness make light, then you have really made your purpose in life in this world. You've succeeded.
yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, our own family story is one of resilience after horrific incidents happened to one of our daughters, and she ended up with addiction and substance abuse and self-harm and anxiety and depression, anorexia, fibromyalgia. She's got a number of autoimmune diseases, and this year she is 4 years clean of all of that. She has survived suicide, she has survived suicidal ideation, she has survived anxiety, she has survived self-harm. She has fought her way back from the brink, and I fully believe in the work that you're doing with this book, especially. And I think that if people do give it the time and they do give it the attention, they will find resilience and inspiration in this book. And I know when I read it, I the thought that ran through my head, I thought, where was this book when my little girl was 14? Where was this book? And it just made me realize how exceptional and how needed this book is. Um, I mean, I've told you my favorite part of the book, but I wanted to know for you, um, there are so many layers, but what is your favorite part of the book? Like, what holds the most emotional weight for you um, in Spots's journey?
There are many moments that bring both tears and joy to me, even when I reread it, or goosebumps. But not to probably two moments are, if I am allowed to choose more than one.
You are.
uh, Thank you. Well, one is when he thinks that everything is written, everything is set, and there's nowhere he can go but simply the best way to disappear. Um, and then he ends up um, finding happiness and finding love and finding a reason to live. I think for me, that was a very, very strong emotional point as he finally lays there and then getting the reassurance when they say that, Atlas says, no, there's no way, even I wouldn't go there. So this was a Fata Morgana. This was in imagination. This didn't really happen. And since everybody was accounted for, this really didn't take place. And holding it inside, wanting it to share. Obviously, we all want to say, you know what, I did it. You didn't think I can, but I did it. But him holding it inside just because, he doesn't care anymore about the approval of someone else. He knows for himself
Mm,
his value. He now does not
mm,
need
mm,
the assurance. He was looking for it all his life. He looked for it. He looked from his dad. He looked from the rest of the herd. But he now realized, you know what? I know who I am. I don't need to be. And it's a very strong realization that takes a
mm,
lot of wisdom and pain to appreciate.
mm,
And
mm.
and then and then the and another part, and I don't know if I should or shouldn't give it away, but the other part when he meets with his dad towards the end, and what's most speaks to me is when they reflect and how Spots responds, because how
Yes,
Spots responds to his dad really speaks
yes.
volumes, because many times we want to say many things to someone who we feel unfairly judged us or treated us or caused us pain. But the way he responds is, I think, the wise way to respond. And I
Mm,
wish I could take credit for that, but I can't, because this response is the response that Joseph gave to his brothers when
yep,
they were scared of him in Egypt. And I
yep,
think, again, to be able to reach that uh, mental maturity, that wisdom,
yes.
you need to undergo these trials and tribulations.
Yeah. And Joseph, I mean, if we're just talking about Joseph for a second, he did undergo many. If we're thinking of our little Joe there, that was quite a story. And then landing up in Egypt and having the ability to look after his family in such a way that they could never have imagined. I mean, you know, sometimes that still blows my mind. But I do love in your book you talk about a synagogue, you talk about a Bible, but what I really loved was the fact that Spots had community, and the community didn't look like how he thought it would look, being born into the family that he was. And yet that family rejected him. But yet he had this beautiful community that literally gathered around him and supported him and gave him strength and encouragement even when he was at his lowest. And for me, that kind of story, I think of New York, I think of where you are. I was last in New York when I was 18, so that was a long, long time ago. um, and and I remember just thinking to myself, what an incredibly diverse place it was. It blew my mind. This little girl from Cape Town, South Africa, traveling all the way across the sea. And I felt like I had no support and no community. And yet I found community when I was there, and I found support when I was there. And I think I think oftentimes we forget that everybody has a story. Everybody has something that they've gone through, things that they have had to fight to get through. And we can never judge a book by its cover. We can never judge someone just by what we see. And if I look at Spots in this book, that is particularly how he was judged, right? On his appearance. And my goodness, did he blow everybody's theories out the water? Like that for me was just, it spoke to my heart so sincerely. And I've had such fun reading this book, and it's given me such moments of joy and, as you say, tears and goosebumps. And at the end, when you shared about his dad, that was one part that really gave me goosebumps. That was really, really, really something. And I thank you so much for writing it. Like, I'm just so blown away that you chose to do that, because a lot of us have great ideas, right? We have great ideas, but we never act on them. We never act on them. And it's amazing to me that you recognize the need for something like this, and you just went ahead and did it. And like, I'm like, oh, well, that's great. And I think that inspires our listeners, because that's one message that we always try to get across, that if you have something, an idea, whatever, do it. Don't sit on it. Just do it. And um, I think your story is incredible. I mean, just the parts that you told, of growing up in Africa and Nigeria, and and that's incredible. But I wanted to know. So I'm sure you see loads of families. You've had loads of experiences in your life, but I'm just wondering, have people who've read this book, have, besides, I mean, you spoke about that young girl who was 16, have you had any other families with children who've come back to you and said, like, please, can you write some more? Like, please, can you do some more? What reaction have you had from other families?
And unfortunately, not gotten directly from some. Some who read it said they loved it. They want it to be written more. I had some who read it and said, you know what? It's a great book, but I don't think society would accept it. And this was about, maybe 7 years ago. What you need to do is you need to change the Jewish motive there. Uh, this book is not to make me money. This book is not to I make a living. You need to accept it the way it is. When you look at Anna Frank's diaries that became
Favorite
very
book of all
famous,
time? Favorite book of all time.
it's an incredible diary, incredible story. And you think about the play that was created from it. During the play, that eventually became the official play because they convinced the father to give it to someone else to do it. The main message that she said was changed, and they changed it to say, well, different in different times, different people around the world were being persecuted, and that's what she was feeling. Why did they do that to us? What have we done wrong? I don't see it. And the many people not like you did not read it, and so they missed that part. So
Mm,
if I take as an author the part that I feel that spoke to me, or that um, was the source of my inspiration, then you start tugging at the fibers of the quilt, and at the end of the road, you are left just with a thread, and you don't have the whole picture. You cannot put it together. So I said to them, you know what? I am grateful for that, and perhaps you're right, but this is how I saw it. And you
mm,
know, just like spots, you need to accept them the way it is. You may not understand it, but again,
mm,
look at the spots. What did they call them? Spots. But in reality, you know what those spots were.
mm.
Those spots were constellations. They were stars on
Absolutely.
a canvas of darkness, like the sky is black, but those white spots are stars. But it took him time to realize that. He
Yep.
looks up to the North Star and says, one day I want to be like you, not realizing that he
He already is.
already is. Exactly, he already is. And that's why on the front cover you have the Big Dipper, and if you put the right spaces
Yes,
to
I
teach
saw
kids
that.
about constellation, you get to the North Star. And the idea of the North Star was to be actually the location where the heart of the horse is. Now, interestingly, the heart of the horse is right hidden in the space there, kind of
I
like
didn't know
all
that.
of our hearts. Yes, it's written right in that space. It's not here. We drew it here to kind of make it a little more visible, but it's the true heart is right here.
Yes.
And it's kind of like our true potential is often very hidden from a lot of
Right.
people, and sometimes even from
Oh, I
us.
love that.
And we have to go through some extraordinary tests to
Yeah,
appreciate that we have that potential, and to recognize, hey, you know what? This is our heart and it's right over here. This is our soul. We can do it. And there's no end. That's what we need to realize. There's no limit to what we can do if we truly
absolutely.
work hard, believe, and keep rising every time we fall, and understand that falling is actually part of building, a part of rising. If you're trying to exercise, we all know, oh yes, you have to have a little muscle tear. You have to feel the pain
Mm,
in order for the muscles to
mm,
grow. The
mm,
same thing, like with that, the same thing.
mm. My father always used to say to me growing up, I played a lot of sport, like so much sport. And my father, I would get really upset if I didn't, score a goal in hockey or water polo, if I didn't win my race in swimming, if I came fifth in my athletics instead of third or second, and my dad would often say to me, but kid, if you don't know what failure looks like, how then can you appreciate success? And and it kind of stuck with me because, Spots goes through some really low points. And sometimes I feel like if we don't experience those low points, we cannot fully appreciate those high points, those times when we step into the fullness of who we are and we take it with both hands, with gratitude and thanks, and absolutely walk into our purpose with confidence, knowing that this is who I am. And I'm so grateful that you've written this book, because I think that a lot of children today need to read something like this. They need to know that you don't have to peak in junior school. Do you know what I mean? Like, people peak at different times. People are going to peak in high school, they're going to peak in university. You're going to have a number of peaks in your life. But what you want to do is make sure that you're keeping on going, working, growing, striving, persevering. And I think that your book speaks to that on every single level. So I just want to close off and just say thank you so much for actually making the time to speak to us here, and for giving us such an insight into your journey in writing this book and where your heart is. And it's been the most wonderful experience, and thank you very, very much. And I hope that we can speak again at some point. And please, can you write some more Spots books, please?
First of all, I want to say that you're mistaken. It's my honor, and thank you for what you and your husband are doing. It is so vital. It is so important. And
Thank
if
you.
one thing that I'm grateful for the book is for the opportunity to meet amazing people like you and your husband
Oh,
who are
thank
really
you.
changing the world. So thank you, thank you, thank you for what you're
Thank you,
doing.
Eyal. Dr. Levitt's book is available on Amazon. Find the link on our website, www.unfilterthatlens.com. Thank you so much for joining. Bye for now.